Here we go. From Beowulf. So this is the next page in the anthology. This, Beowulf, is a person's name, and we're going to read a story titled Beowulf. It's about this guy. It had to be translated because originally it was written in Old English, which is not Shakespeare. It's actually even older than that, and there's no way that we could read it without having a translation. On the story, there's a picture. Okay, this is an old-fashioned map before they had good map making skills. So a lot of the stuff is out of proportion. But this is up where Scandinavia is, where Sweden and Denmark and Norway are. And if you took a boat from up here, you could take a boat down the coastline. And eventually, once you get down to around here, you get to where England is. Okay, England and Ireland. Okay, so people used to take their boats down to England, and they would steal stuff and do all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we are going to read this 2 pages, and then you're going to do your work. English literature begins with Beowulf. It is England's heroic epic as a hero, a proper beginning for a national literature, but it belongs to everyone because it is profoundly human. The poem, and it is written in poem form, shapes and interprets materials connected with the tribes from Northern Europe. Okay, so here are the tribes that attacked England. We've got the Angles, the Saxons, the Jutes, who invaded England after the Romans left in the 5th century. Their tribal history is in the poem. It is remote, even monstrous, and yet familiar, keeping the bloody feud alive. All right, feuds between tribes and paying the living for one crime with another. It is a history of festering pride, loud talk, and drunken violence, of spies, bloody borders, and raids. So it's filled with all this violence of fighting. Okay, but against this dark background, the poem presents another kind of history. It is the history in which a stranger comes openly to help rather than covertly to kill and loot, in which eating and drinking and speaking and gift giving are natural ceremonies uniting young and old, in which heroic strength is wise and generous. It is a history of ideal possibilities. Okay, and here the ideals are more pleasant. Okay, we've got helping going on. We've got gift giving going on. Okay, we have uniting going on. What's up, Malik? I need you to sign off your other meet then.
No meet.
Whatever it is you're talking on.
I'm not on it.
Okay. The only surviving manuscript of Beowulf dates from around 1000. Okay, and it's a manuscript. It was written down. But the work itself was probably composed sometime during the 8th century. So it was probably written without writing it down. Okay, it was probably sung. The poem, which recounts the exploits of 3rd and 4th century Geats and Danes, is doubtless based on earlier unwritten stories that have been passed down from generation to generation by word of mouth. Okay, they were told. They weren't written down until later. The Anglo-Saxons of Britain shared a common group of heroes with other Germanic peoples. These were the tribes that attacked from the continent. And the hero Beowulf certainly has his origins in an earlier pagan era. That is pre-Christianity belief in certain kinds of gods. They had a lot of gods. The author of the written version that has come down to us seems to have been a Christian. So you're going to have the pagan and the Christian mixed together. The language of this version is Old English, and the translation you'll read in modern English is by the poet Burton Raffle. Okay, so the Old English is unreadable to us because it looks like that. Okay, and I dare you to try to read that. That's English. That is what is called Old English. Okay, it is the beginning of the English language. It was more Celtic and Germanic.
I can't even see it.
You cannot read that. Yeah, there's just, I don't know how you're supposed to read that. It doesn't even have the same letters.
I can see M.
Like this right here, I guess that's supposed to be the guy's name, Beowulf. Beowulf. So Beowulf, and I don't know how to read another word. I'm looking for another word.
Do you think it sounds like English?
Dinpa. No, it doesn't sound like English. It sounds much more like Celtic
It sounds like gibberish.
or German. To us now, it sounds like gibberish. You would certainly need to learn the language in order to be able to translate it. Beowulf, like all epic poems, those are very long poems that usually have a hero, and it goes through the journey of the hero doing these amazing things. Beowulf, like all epic poems, is about a hero who is a leader of his people. The action is extraordinary. The hero, larger than life. The diction is stately. The words, okay, make it sound majestic. And many of its scenes, the banquet, the battle, the boast, the voyage, the funeral, are traditional. The general tone of the poem is somber, owing to the vision of evil in the world, a belief in the power of fate. Word is the old English word for it. Okay, this concept of fate, that, you know, our future's already mapped out for us, and that we really don't have any choice but to go forward to whatever it is that's mapped out for us. The power of fate to rule human destiny, and a resignation to the certainty of death. And you remember way back then, they would have died earlier. Like, you could die at age 35 as an old person. And there certainly was plenty of violence and plenty of disease. The first selection begins during a banquet given by the Danish king Hrothgar. Hrothgar, in a new mead hall called Herit. Mead is like, I guess the closest thing to it would be a fruit punch or a beer, to commemorate his victories. The mead hall, or banqueting hall, is so called because of a popular drink, mead, a fermented liquor made of water, honey, malt, and yeast, which was drunk at banquets and celebrations. Herit, apparently they gave the name to the actual place where they had these parties. Herit is also intended to be a place of peace and community. It is a symbol of the loyalty and interdependence of the Lord and his faithful warriors. However, fate has the monster Grendel in store for the Danes. We're going to read some of this story about this monster, okay? But before we get to that, before we get to the story, I want you to go to the questions. I want you to open up the questions, and I want you to do the best you can to answer these questions from what we just read, and talk to each other, and talk to me, and go online and try to answer these questions. Okay, that's your job. So go ahead and start. You can ask me questions as you're doing it. Fill in the answers to these questions.